This is a GIF. A little image format that helps us to provide our honest reaction without using a single word. It became somewhat of a gold standard in online conversations because of just how expressive and compact it is. That very balance made GIFs not only a conversation material, but also an ideal solution for the early years of the internet. Though this format's journey was far from smooth. In fact, at one point it was even at the brink of going extinct. So today we will jump into the origins of this tiny format and see how it ended up taking over the entire internet space. Our story begins in a time when computers were still something new for people and nowhere near as powerful as they are right now. GIF, which stands for Graphics Interchange Format, was developed by an online services company called CompuServe. Specifically, a team within that company that was led by Steve Wilhite. Basically, CompuServe were offering people services like email, chatting, and file sharing, way before the invention of the World Wide Web. At first, CompuServe used a black and white image format called RLE to be shared by users. But with more and more machines now becoming able to display colors, they now had a new task. See, colorful images are a lot of data, and there had to be a way to compress those images so they could be sent without wasting too much of the computer resources. And in 1987, the team would successfully complete the task with the release of the first version of GIF. This format supported up to 8 bits per pixel, which meant that each image of this format could use a palette of 256 different colors. A thing that also helped GIFs to keep the size as small as possible was an LZW compression algorithm. Basically how it worked is that it identified repeating patterns of the image and then simplified them in code without losing any data. In 1989, the last version of GIF, 89A, would be released. Now with support for animation delays and the ability for a GIF file to have a transparent background. The format was becoming more and more popular. It would actually be one of the first image formats to be commonly used on websites, and overall, it was becoming some kind of an internet standard. But as the year 1994 was coming to an end, things would take a turn for the worse. You see, the LZW algorithm that GIF was incorporating was actually patented by a company called Unisys way back in 1985. So, what happened? Both CompuServe and Unisys would announce to the public that developers who write software to create and read files using their algorithm would have to pay royalties to Unisys. People were not happy about it, and this move would be met with a ton of backlash. They just didn't know if their usage of GIFs was also a subject to royalties. While that was being imposed, CompuServe announced that they would coordinate the development of GIF 24. Basically a free successor to GIF without this LZW thing. Though there was already something in the works, as a group of enthusiasts, led by Thomas Boutel, was developing a new, now infamous alternative called PNG. In the end, CompuServe were really impressed by what the group has done and would just say, yep, that works. But the problem is that PNG was not designed to support animation like GIF, which was a huge advantage, and even with PNG being better in every single aspect, GIF would not be replaced. A new wave of online protests would occur in 1999, when Unisys would once again change its stance on who's required to have a license, and now it also included freeware. But also, Unisys announced that they're gonna charge $5,000 for websites to use GIF files, even though claiming that most of the websites will not be affected. All of that led to an infamous Burn All the GIFs Day on November 5th of that year. A day when internet was supposed to get rid of all of the GIF files by either converting them or just straight up deleting. Did it work? Probably not. I mean, you're watching this video, so I guess not all the GIFs were burned. But regardless, Unisys did not get what they wanted, as really no one would end up paying this amount of money for simply using GIFs. There would be future attempts like M&G to dethrone GIF, but people would still stay by the latter side, and finally, in 2004, the LZW patent would expire and now belong to one and only internet. After no format seemed to replace GIF, and with it going to a public domain, it was officially time for people all around the web to do whatever they wanted. As you would expect, the internet was rapidly evolving and people kept on finding new ways to make their online experience more fun. Literally, the earliest known internet memes were shared as GIFs, so there was a lot of potential for this format to shape a new age of web entertainment. Let's quickly rewind to 2001, because that's the year when a software developer by the name of Max Goldberg would create a website called YourTheManNowDog.com, along with registering DustinDiamond.com. The latter contained the actual name of an actor who would file a lawsuit against Goldberg, but would eventually lose it. After winning a lawsuit, Goldberg made a press release where he mentioned his YourTheManNowDog website, the one that simply contained a picture of Sean Connery and an audio loop of him saying, "You're the man now, dog." But he also mentioned a new website that he was working on, called YTMND, which would later go on to become one of the most popular internet meme hubs. It was basically a website that hosted memes in the form of web pages, just like this one. Still images or animated GIFs, accompanied by some looped audio. That's pretty much it. The whole internet population really liked it, and from 2004 to 2007, YTMND was at its peak. But here comes the problem by the name of YouTube. With YouTube getting more and more popular, YTMND as a media hosting was becoming less relevant. The format of such web pages was also slowly fading away, and there's really nothing much you can do about it. That's how the internet works. But this wasn't the death of GIFs. Not at all, because this format was on its way to become even more popular. And you probably know how. Reaction images were becoming a new way to interact with people online, with the earliest examples of it appearing on websites like 2chan or 4chan. The rise of high-speed internet made it possible to share and load animated GIFs much easier. And with this concept of communication getting more popular by each day, it created a perfect storm. In 2007, a social media platform known as Tumblr would launch, welcoming artists and fandom members from all around the world. Unlike other platforms like Facebook or Twitter, it would actually allow its users to share animated GIFs, which quickly became a part of its culture. Though there were some shortcomings eventually, as even with size and low resolution limits for GIFs, it became really expensive for Tumblr to store all of it. But with the help of a Harvard computer scientist, Eddie Collar, and his own tool called Gifsicle, they would get rid of that problem. So basically what he did was adding several resampling methods. Optional palette expansion. Anyway, at this point, it was now the biggest internet phenomenon, where instead of text, people could just use short animations to quickly express their reaction. It was especially a huge deal with fandoms, with thousands of GIFs with their favorite celebrities being produced and shared. It is February of 2013. Alex Chung and Jace Cook are enjoying their breakfast, while talking about this new rising trend of visual communication, when suddenly they came up with a business idea that would not only bring them a huge amount of money, but also make GIFs much more accessible and popular. So in that same month, they found a website called Giphy, which became a first search engine for our beloved GIFs. Such a simple concept, but it was a huge success right away, because during its very first week, Giphy would already catch the eyes of around 1 million users. Now, looking for GIFs you want to use became much easier, and within this exact same year, Giphy brings them to Facebook and then Twitter. You could simply just leave a link for a GIF that you want and boom, it's done. Later, both of these platforms finally added official support for GIFs, but it's still a very interesting thing to observe that this little format was in such demand, people would try and make some obscure workarounds just so they could share them. Giphy, though, wouldn't be the only business revolving around GIFs, as Riffsy would be created, or Tenor as we know it now. Tenor is another GIF search engine that also has its own keyboard for mobile devices. I don't really know if anyone is actually using it today, because probably every social media already has either Tenor or Giphy integration. Though beyond just communication, GIF was also a tool to make dynamic art. You've probably seen those animations that feel like they don't end, no matter how long you were staring at them. This right here is a concept of looped animations. It takes advantage of GIF's ability to constantly repeat itself, and by finishing the animation with a similar frame to the beginning one, it creates this beautiful seamless loop. It is very common for them to be in a form of either pixel art or some low poly stuff, with someone showing sprite animations, maybe some landscape they've drawn, while others do some crazy stuff in Blockbench, but not limited to. And while GIF is a relatively limited format, people have found a way to make it its feature and not a flaw. This style of art is pretty much a time capsule, capturing just how limited everything was back then, and I think it's pretty cool. To no one's surprise, animated GIFs are still as popular as they were a decade, 2 decades, or even 3 decades ago. This very format was acting as a reflection of the whole internet for a really long time. And in that very time, a lot of things have changed, like our humor. But just like with any other type of media, people know how to adapt, and that's what keeps such phenomena like GIFs alive. This format truly had one hell of a story, and despite all the shortcomings, it was still adored by a countless amount of people who then would actually help it to take over the entire internet. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, leave a like, subscribe, because 98% of you didn't, and we definitely need to do something about it. Thank you all, and I will see ya next time.